The breeze was sharp that morning, the kind that made your bones feel older than they were. I stood on the upper deck of the boat holding a paper cup of lukewarm coffee, staring out at the Snake River. It should have been peaceful. It was my 72nd birthday, and my daughter had arranged a small surprise, her words, not mine. There were white balloons, a store-bought cake, and a banner that said, "Happy Birthday, Mom," in cheap gold foil letters. The letters flapped against the railing like they were trying to leave, too. Celeste stood beside me in a dark gray sundress, and she leaned in close, brushing a crumb off my shoulder that wasn't there. "Smile, Mom," she said softly. Her voice sounded sweet, practiced. Then came the hands. I didn't see them, I felt them. One from behind, one at the middle of my back. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't an accident. My feet lifted off the deck before my mind could name what was happening. The water wasn't just cold. It was violent. It swallowed me in one breath like I hadn't lived 72 years but was just a pebble to be tossed away. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The shock hit me like a wall, lungs frozen, arms flailing. I twisted up just long enough to see the boat drifting farther, the music still playing faint and absurd in the background. No one looked over the edge. No one shouted. Not even Celeste. And just like that, I disappeared. I went under once, then again, and the third time I didn't fight. Not because I gave up, but because something sharper clicked inside me, something colder than the river itself. If they thought the current would keep their secret, they didn't know the river half as well as I did. The current didn't carry me away. It carried me back. The second time I went under, I stopped thrashing. That's the first rule my father taught me. Don't fight the river, read it. Feel its pull, find its rhythm. The moment I stilled, I stopped sinking. Floating wasn't peace, it was calculation. Cold bit into my spine, my arms, my thighs. The dress wrapped around my legs like weeds, but I bent my knees and rolled gently with the current, keeping my face up. I could almost hear my father's voice. Don't panic. Let it carry you until you see something solid. Debris passed me, a broken tree limb, a plastic bottle, a chunk of someone's lost dock. I reached for the thickest branch and latched on, letting the weight of it tether me. Every breath burned, but it was breath. That meant I wasn't done yet. The river didn't rush that day, it dragged. Lazy and wide, winding like a lie that takes its time. I drifted for what must have been hours. No concept of time, except the shifting position of the sun and the dull throb of my bruised ribs. At one point, I closed my eyes not to sleep, but to remember where I was. The Snake bends hard past the old gravel yard near Parker's Mill. If I could catch the shoreline there, I'd have a shot. Eventually, the current shoved me into a bank lined with tangled roots. I let go of the branch and clawed into the mud fingers, slipping, then finding purchase. I pulled myself up, choking, panting, shaking. My knees sank, then rose. I crawled more than I walked. No shoes. One earring gone. Skin scraped raw from rocks and branches. But I was breathing. Upright. Still here. I don't remember how long I wandered before I saw the familiar fence post bent from last winter's storm. Home was just beyond it, tucked behind pine and birch. My cabin. My land. My name still on the deed for now. I didn't cry when I reached the porch. I didn't pray. I just unlocked the door with the key I'd tucked in my bra, because some part of me had never stopped preparing, and some part of me had never stopped watching. I stripped off my soaked clothes and wrapped myself in the oldest towel I owned, threadbare, scratchy, but mine. My hands trembled too hard to grip the mug at first, but I finally got black coffee into my system. The bitterness settled my breath. I turned on my laptop. It took a few tries, my fingers were stiff, and the power button stuck like it always did when it rained. The home screen glowed. Familiar. That comfort lasted exactly 2 minutes. The bank portal rejected my password. I tried again, slower. Rejected. When I clicked forgot password, the security question had changed. That was the first crack. I moved to the county recorder's site. I hadn't logged into it in months, maybe a year, but I knew how to find the digital trail. And there it was, my name, my parcel number, and a document labeled Transfer of Ownership, pending verification. I clicked. The document opened with my name at the bottom, my signature or something that tried to be. Shaky. A little too perfect. I never looped my M like that. Attached to the file was a second document power of attorney. It granted full control over my finances, medical decisions, and real estate to one Celeste Hanover. My daughter. That's when my hands stopped shaking. My whole body went still. This wasn't grief. This wasn't some twisted coping mechanism. They hadn't just assumed I was dead, they were counting on it. I stared at the screen until the backlight blurred. This wasn't about a house. It never was. It was about removing me so cleanly that no one would question where I'd gone. Not the neighbors. Not the bank. Not the law. I shut the laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I pulled out the fireproof lockbox from behind the coat closet. My fingertips still sticky with river mud, I keyed in the combination. Because the moment they tried to write me out of existence, they forgot something critical. I'd written myself back in a long time ago. The lockbox held what I needed, the original trust agreement notarized and sealed. 5 years ago, after a minor stroke sent me to the hospital overnight, I sat in my lawyer's office and signed away the illusion of security. I told myself it was just a precaution, a backup plan, not a prediction. Now it read like prophecy. The property wasn't in my name anymore. It was owned by the Dallery family irrevocable trust, managed solely by me with no provision for transfer without my direct and witnessed consent. Celeste's forged paperwork didn't touch it. Couldn't. She hadn't known this version existed. I never told her I'd rewritten the future without her in it. I called Annette from the kitchen phone. My voice cracked on the first word, but I steadied it fast. "You were right," I said. "I usually am," she replied. "Talk to me." I gave her everything what I found in the county records, the forged power of attorney, the attempted transfer, the missing persons charade they never filed, and finally, the fact that I wasn't supposed to be alive to tell her any of it. There was a long pause on her end. Then, "Send me digital copies now. I'll file a protective motion before they even get out of bed." By that afternoon, the pending deed was frozen. The power of attorney flagged as fraudulent. My trust activated into full legal lockdown, and a quiet red flag was added to Celeste's name across several state databases. She wouldn't know that yet, but she'd feel it soon enough. I spent the rest of the day photographing bruises, arms, collarbone, a gash behind my left knee. I saved each file to 2 external drives and a password-protected folder I labeled Insurance. Real. I wrote an affidavit, time-stamped it, and signed it while my skin still bore the shape of what they'd done. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building. They'd tried to bury me. I'd come back with a shovel of my own, and the next move would be mine. The hardest part wasn't the water. It wasn't the bruises or the betrayal, or even the sound of the boat pulling away. It was the memory of every moment I dismissed as nothing. Celeste asked about my will for the first time 3 years ago. We were drinking coffee after dinner, and she leaned in like she was asking about the weather. "Do you have everything in order?" she'd said. "You know, just in case?" I'd laughed. I remember that clearly. I told her the only thing in order was my spice rack. After that, she started offering to help more. "Let me take care of the paperwork, Mom. You shouldn't have to deal with tax stuff anymore. We can add me to the accounts just to make emergencies easier." She always said it sweetly, always with a smile. I said no, but I said it gently. I didn't want to offend her. And then there was last year's birthday. They took me to a buffet. Celeste scrolled her phone through most of it. Troy didn't look up once. When the waitress brought out a cupcake with a candle, they didn't sing. Troy actually winced when I blew it out. I remember thinking, maybe they're just stressed, tired, busy. Maybe I wanted to believe that because the alternative was unthinkable. But now, sitting here with bandaged arms and my feet still raw from walking barefoot across gravel and road, I see it all for what it was. Not random, not emotional, methodical. The questions, the fake concern, the growing distance disguised as adulthood. They didn't grow away from me. They grew over me like ivy choking an old wall, slow, quiet. Beautiful, even until the foundation starts to crack. The river didn't try to kill me. My daughter did. And the truth isn't just that she planned it. It's that I saw it coming, and I let it slide. Every time. But not anymore. Now I was done explaining things away. And they were about to learn what happens when the woman they erased writes herself back in. They never called the police. Not once. No missing persons report, no flyers, no search teams or late-night interviews on the local news. Nothing. I waited a week just to be sure. Then I checked the public records empty. I called the sheriff's department myself using a payphone 2 towns over. I asked if anyone had reported a woman matching my description, lost in the river. The deputy paused, then answered plainly, "No, ma'am. Nothing like that filed here." That's when I knew. They weren't panicking. They weren't even pretending. They had moved on to the next part of the plan. The invitation went out quietly. A celebration of life, hosted at their house on a Sunday afternoon. Brunch, casual, just family and a few close friends. The kind of thing polite people do when they want to look devastated, but efficient. I parked my car a block away, wrapped a scarf around my head, and walked the sidewalk like any other neighbor passing by. I stopped across the street and leaned against a tree. From that angle, I could see everything. Celeste stood on the front steps, greeting guests with that smile, the one she used when she needed something. Troy wore black, of course, and held a glass of wine too early in the day. They'd set up a photo table with my framed pictures, most of which I hated. Candles, a vase of lilies. There was even a quote printed on cardstock. She lived with grace. I pressed record on my phone. I took pictures. The food, the setup, the guest book they'd faked, the way no one cried, the way no one asked questions. They laughed, they toasted, they told stories about my peaceful nature. I watched it all from across the street unseen. Not a single person there knew the truth, but I did. I knew who signed the fake paperwork. I knew who pushed. I knew who let go. And now I knew something else. If they were already mourning me, I no longer owed them silence. It was time to send the first package. I didn't write a letter. I built a case. 2 large manila envelopes, one addressed to Annette, one to the local sheriff's department marked confidential. Inside, the county property record with the forged deed and fake signature. My notarized trust agreement showing I never authorized a transfer. Medical documentation from the urgent care clinic I visited after crawling ashore. Photos of the bruises, the contusions across my ribs, the torn skin on my knees. I printed stills from the memorial brunch. Troy laughing beside a banner that read, "In loving memory." Celeste accepting condolences with a hand over her heart, not a tear in sight. I wrote a sworn affidavit. 5 pages, clear, calm, and chronological. I described the boat, the shove, the chill of the river, the way no one looked over the edge, how I floated, crawled, walked barefoot for miles, logged into my accounts, discovered the forged documents, and how I stayed hidden until I was ready not to be. At the top of each packet, I included the same note in bold handwritten ink. This was not an accident. I survived. And I'm done being quiet. No signature, no need. Annette would know what to do. She'd filed motions for clients in worse shape, and she'd warned me years ago that families could turn, especially when money is involved. As for the sheriff, I didn't expect instant fireworks. But this wasn't gossip. This was documented fraud, attempted theft, possible attempted homicide, and the beginning of something they couldn't ignore. I sealed the envelopes, double-checked the addresses, and drove them myself to 2 different post offices using cash to buy priority mail labels. No cameras, no trail, no margin for their denials. Back at home, I opened a blank notebook and wrote the word timeline across the top. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was returning with receipts. And next, I wanted to see how much pressure it took before something inside them cracked. It happened faster than I expected. 3 days after the packages went out, I got a call from Annette. No greeting, just 3 words. They've been served. By the following morning, an unmarked cruiser parked outside Celeste and Troy's house. I wasn't there in person, but I knew the routine. 2 officers at the door badges shone calm voices asking simple questions they already knew the answers to. Can we ask when you last saw your mother, Mrs. Hanover? Celeste would have blinked, played the grieving daughter. Oh, it's been weeks. We assumed. We thought she. And when exactly did you file the missing persons report? A pause. Troy would have stepped in. We didn't. There wasn't a body. We figured the current took her. His voice always faltered under pressure. Too smooth when he lied. Too practiced. The officers would have shared a glance. They'd been briefed. Do you recognize this signature, one would ask, holding up the forged deed transfer. And then silence. Not the silence of mourning, the silence of realization. They were caught. By noon, they were both asked to come down to the station for formal statements. Not under arrest. Yet, but not optional either. That's the gray space where people start unraveling. Annette called again at 5. They're rattled, she said. They didn't see it coming. Neither of them had a lawyer present. I nodded into the receiver. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But my chest felt less heavy. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't after their suffering. I was after the truth being seen and heard and logged in official record, because for so long I had been the only witness to what they'd done. Now they were surrounded by people who could finally see it too. I looked out my window at the slow-moving river. That morning, it had been still, but I knew what lived beneath the surface, and it wasn't done pulling. They called me on a Thursday. Detective Harris said, "We'd like you to come in, Ms. Dallery. They need to see you, and you need to be heard." I didn't ask for details. I just said yes. I wore black slacks, a gray blouse, and the same boots I'd worn when I crawled out of the river. Still scuffed. Still mine. I didn't wear makeup. Didn't pull my hair back. I wanted them to see every bruise that had faded, every line time, and betrayal had etched into my face. When I walked into the station, the front desk officer didn't flinch. He'd been briefed. A quiet nod and a guiding hand down the hall. The door to the interview room opened, and there they were. Celeste sat stiff, arms crossed tight against her chest. Troy's knee bounced uncontrollably. Their wrists weren't cuffed, but their panic was visible, clinging to them like wet clothing. Celeste saw me first. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping out of water. "You were supposed to be," she started. "Dead," I said, stepping fully into the room. "I was. But only to the part of me that trusted you." She didn't speak again. Troy looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't give him the grace. I turned to Detective Harris. "I'm ready to testify." He gestured for me to sit. "We're recording," he said. "I want it recorded," I replied. And I told it all. I told them how I floated, how I clawed to shore, how I logged into my accounts and found my name replaced by theirs. I described every bruise, every fake signature, every photograph I took while they toasted my death. They didn't interrupt. They didn't look at me. They looked at the table, at the floor, at the moment it all began to crumble. And I never raised my voice. Because some truths don't need to be screamed. Some truths just walk back into the room and sit across from you breathing. And I wasn't finished speaking. The river looks different now. It still moves. Slow, still snakes around the bend, like it has all the time in the world. But I don't see danger in it anymore. I see the thing that carried me back when no one else did. I sip my coffee, black, no sugar. The morning fog clings low to the trees. No cars pass. No neighbors drop by. Just the sound of birdsong and the steady hum of a world that no longer demands anything from me. 1 year. It's been 1 year since the water, since the betrayal, since the silence turned into evidence and the quiet into strength. Celeste and Troy are still under investigation. Fraud, attempted murder, forgery. Every week, Annette sends me updates. Depositions, court dates, delays. The wheels turn slow, but they turn. I don't ask for revenge. I only ask for record. For history to speak my name correctly this time. There are no interviews, no articles, no curious phone calls from reporters trying to spin my story into headlines. I kept it all small, controlled, like the woman I used to be before everything cracked open. Inside on my bookshelf, there's a glass jar. It's not fancy, just an old jam jar cleaned out and repurposed. The label reads, "Kept." I drop a single stone into it. The stone is smooth, dark gray, still cold even after all this time. I'd found it in my fist that first night, clenched so tight, it left a mark on my palm. I kept it on the windowsill for months, watching it dry in the sun, until I realized it didn't just survive with me, it remembered with me. The jar isn't full. It only holds that one thing. But it's enough. I lean back in my chair, wrap both hands around the mug and close my eyes. I'm not who I was before the water. That version of me dissolved somewhere between betrayal and breath. What's left now is quieter, steadier, and nothing they take from me will ever touch it again.